The morning sun had barely risen when Mira stepped out of the small mud house she shared with her father. The air was cold, and dew still rested gently on the grass. Her father, weak and coughing lightly, watched her from the doorway. "Mira," he called softly, his voice trembling with age and illness. She paused and looked back at him. "You don't have to go this early. Rest a little." Mira forced a small smile, though her heart felt heavy. "If I rest, there will be nothing to eat today," she said quietly. Her father lowered his eyes. He hated that she had to suffer this way. But life had not given them many choices. Since Myra's mother died, everything fell on her shoulders. The cooking, the cleaning, and most importantly, the firewood selling that kept their home running. She tied a worn scarf around her head and picked up the small axe leaning against the wall. Then she headed into the forest path that led to the bush. The ground was still wet, and her slippers soaked quickly, but she kept walking. Mira was not just working for herself and her father. She was working for love. For David. David was the boy she had grown up with. The boy she laughed with at the stream. The boy who once held her hands and told her she was his future. He had big dreams, to study at the university and become an engineer. But dreams cost money neither of them had. Yet Mira believed in him. She believed in his mind, his heart, his future. So she made a promise to him one evening 2 years ago. "I will find a way. You will go to school. I will support you, even if I have to sell firewood every day." And she had done exactly that. She reached the forest and began to gather sticks and logs. She cut, broke, tied, and lifted until the bundle was almost heavier than she was. Her hands had scars, deep, rough, painful, but she never complained. Love made her strong. When she walked back through the village carrying the heavy load on her head, people watched her with pity. "That girl is wasting herself," one woman whispered. "She should find someone who can help her, not when she is helping," another said. But Mira didn't listen. Her heart was stubborn and loyal. David was her choice. By noon, she was at the roadside market, arranging the firewood in small bundles. Sweat rolled down her face, and her dress clung to her skin. She waved at passers-by, trying to draw customers without sounding desperate. Some days she sold well. Some days she returned home with almost nothing. But every month, no matter how hard or slow business had been, she made sure to send money to David, who was now far away in the city, studying. He called sometimes, though not as often as before. When he did, his voice sounded tired, distracted, distant. "Mira, school is hard. I have many things to do. I can't talk long." But Mira always smiled through the phone, never complaining. "It's all right. I just wanted to hear your voice. Study well. Remember what we are working for." What she was working for. David always said thank you, but his thank you started sounding different with time, less warm, less full, almost like a duty. Still Mira believed. Still Mira hoped. Still Mira loved. She prayed every night that her sacrifice would not be in vain. That one day she would stand beside David in a better life. A life they both dreamed of. But fate was already writing a different story. A story she could not yet see. A story that would break her and then rebuild her stronger than anyone expected. The days passed slowly, yet the months seemed to fly. Every morning, Mira woke up before the sun rose. She fetched water, made her father's tea, and headed to the bush to cut wood. Her life was routine, but it had purpose, David. One quiet evening, Mira sat outside her house with her father. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink, and the evening breeze carried the smell of cooking fires from neighboring homes. Her father glanced at her hands, rough, blistered, and bruised. "You work too hard," he murmured. Mira smiled lightly. "I'm used to it." "But you shouldn't be used to suffering," he replied, his tone filled with sorrow. "A young woman should be cherished, cared for." Mira looked away. She didn't want him to see the sudden sting in her eyes. "I chose this," she said softly. The truth was, she didn't know any other life. Love had made her sacrifice feel like purpose. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. David was calling. She stood quickly and walked behind the house where it was quiet. "David," she said, her voice already filled with warmth. "Yes, Mira, I'm fine. I received the money. Thank you. His tone was flat, rushed, like he had somewhere else to be. Myra's smile weakened, but she worked to keep her voice steady. I'm glad it helped. How are your studies? Stressful, he sighed. Here, everything is different. People think fast. Everyone is competing. I don't even sleep much. I'm proud of you, she said. There was silence, not the comfortable kind they once shared. A distant, unfamiliar silence. Mira, I want to tell you something, David said finally. Her heart paused. I've been thinking when I finish school and get a good job, everything will change. For both of us. Mira released a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Yes, she whispered, smiling again. We'll get married, David continued. We'll leave the village. I'll buy you a better house. I'll take care of your father, too. I promise. A tear slipped down Myra's cheek. A tear of hope, of love, of relief. Just don't give up on me, he added. I need you to keep believing. I will, she said, her voice gentle and sure. I'll always believe in you. They ended the call. Mira pressed the phone to her chest and closed her eyes. That night, she slept with a smile. But life in the city was changing David in ways Mira did not yet see. In the university, David was discovering a world he had never imagined. A world of bright lights, good food, expensive phones, stylish clothes, and confident people who walked like they owned the earth. He felt small at first, but soon he started wanting to fit in. He avoided taking pictures with the old shoes Mira bought him. He stopped mentioning the village when friends talked about their homes. He never spoke about the girl selling firewood, who sent him money every month. And then there was Sandra. She was from a well-known family in the city. Her father had businesses. Her mother drove a fancy car. Sandra had soft hands and perfume that smelled like flowers. She was everything the city admired. David felt drawn to her, or rather, drawn to the life around her. At first, it was friendship. Then it became late-night conversations. Then it became something else. Mira did not know any of this. She only knew the promise she held close. A promise she repeated to herself whenever her hands ached, whenever she carried firewood under the burning sun, whenever hunger sat heavy in her stomach. One day, all this will be worth it. But life was preparing a lesson for her, one that would break her heart wide open. The harmattan season came, bringing dry winds and dust that settled on rooftops and on people's skin. The days felt longer and the evenings colder. Yet Myra's routine remained the same. She woke before dawn, worked all day, and returned home exhausted. But she never complained because she believed in a future she could not yet touch. One late afternoon, after a long day at the market, Mira sat behind her house, washing her feet in a small basin. Her body ached everywhere, shoulders, back, wrists, but her mind was somewhere far away. Her father watched her silently from the doorway. You have not heard from David today, he said gently. Mira nodded. He must be busy. Her father sighed deeply, leaning on his walking stick. Mira, sometimes when people move forward in life, they forget where they came from. She paused, her fingers gripping the basin rim. David is not like that, she said quietly. Her father didn't argue. He simply watched her with eyes that had seen more of the world than hers had. He wanted to protect her, but some lessons he knew life teaches on its own. That night, Mira tried to call David. The phone rang once, twice, then 4 times. No answer. She waited. Minutes became hours. Later, he sent a text. Sorry, in class. I'll call later. But he didn't call. And that became the new pattern. Days turned into weeks where Mira would hear only small pieces of him. Rushed messages, tired tones, excuses that cut softly like paper. Yet she held on. She said nothing. She didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want to be the reason he felt pressure. Love made her patient. Meanwhile, in the city, David was sitting in the university cafeteria, laughing with Sandra and some of her friends. Sandra looked elegant even when tired, her nails polished, her smile warm and confident. David admired the way she spoke, the way she moved, the way she commanded attention without trying. When her friends asked David about his life before school, he avoided details. He changed topics. He laughed things off. Sandra believed David came from a modest background. Not poverty, not struggle, not firewood. David never corrected her. One evening, Sandra leaned her head on his shoulder and said, "I'm glad I met you. You're different. You carry yourself with dignity, not desperation." David felt a strange pride swell in him. Desperation. He knew who that word pointed to. Yet he said nothing. He simply allowed silence to agree. Back in the village, life continued in slow, aching rhythm. Every evening, Mira sat under the mango tree near their house and looked toward the dusty road that led out of the village. She imagined David walking back home with his bag, smiling at her, telling her that school was over and life was about to change. Sometimes she spoke softly to herself, like a prayer. Just a little longer. He is coming back. He will remember. Her father would pass by, pause, look at her, then continue walking, saying nothing. Because some heartbreaks begin quietly, long before anyone realizes they have started. One day, Mira went to the mobile money agent to send David his monthly school allowance. It was smaller this month. Business had been slow, but she sent it anyway. "Done," the agent said, handing her the receipt. Mira smiled, tired but hopeful. That night, David finally called. "Mira, you didn't have to send anything this month," he said. But his voice did not sound grateful. It sounded irritated. Myra's smile faded, though she didn't let her voice shake. "I know things are hard for you. I just wanted to help." There was a long silence on the phone. "Mira," David finally said, "just don't stress yourself too much." And for the first time, there was no warmth, no promise, no future in his words, just distance, so quiet that even Myra's heart heard it. But hope is a stubborn thing, and love, when true and pure, refuses to die quickly. Mira held the phone to her chest. She whispered to the night, "I will not give up." She didn't know that the person she was holding onto was already letting go. Month after month, the distance between Mira and David widened, slowly, quietly, the way grass grows. It does not happen in a single day. But one morning you look, and the ground is no longer the same. Yet Mira did not see it that way. She explained things to herself. He must be busy. He must be tired. He must be stressed. Love teaches a person how to defend the one they love, even when the world is pointing at the truth. One late afternoon, Mira sat at the market, her firewood neatly arranged in small bundles. The sun was hot, but the wind was cool. Vendors called out prices. Children ran past laughing, and Mira sat quietly, watching the road, lost in her thoughts. A woman selling vegetables nearby sighed deeply. "Mira," she said, "when was the last time that boy came home?" Mira looked up gently. "David? He is studying. He will graduate soon." The woman nodded slowly, choosing her words with care. Just make sure you are not holding on to someone who is not holding on to you." Mira smiled politely, but inside something shifted, a soft, small ache. "He loves me," she replied simply. The woman didn't argue. She just nodded and returned to sorting tomatoes. But Myra's heart felt heavier than before. That evening, Mira prepared dinner for her father. They ate quietly, listening to the crickets outside. The sky was dark and the air cool. Her father watched her as she washed the plates. "Mira," he began gently, "if life gives you a sign, don't close your eyes." She knew what he meant. She felt it, but she wasn't ready to accept it. "I just need to hold on a little longer," she whispered. Her father sighed, not out of frustration, but out of helpless love. Meanwhile, in the city, David had changed in ways Mira would not recognize. His clothes were new. His accent had softened. His shoulders were straighter. His steps more confident. Sandra stood beside him in everything. Dinners, outings, lectures. They moved like two people who fit into the same world. One evening, as they sat under the school pavilion, Sandra leaned close and asked softly, "David, are you seeing someone?" He hesitated just for a moment before shaking his head. "No, there's no one." And that was the first time David lied with ease. He didn't feel guilt, just relief, like he had cut off a piece of his past that no longer matched his future. Back in the village, the seasons changed again. Rain came, heavy and loud on the roof. The firewood became harder to cut and harder to sell. Mira sometimes worked with wet clothes, sometimes with an empty stomach. But she kept sending money. She kept waiting. She kept believing. And then one morning, her phone rang. David. Her hands shook slightly when she picked up. Mira, he said, sounding lighter than he had in months, I have good news. I'm graduating next week. Mira felt warmth rush through her chest. Her eyes immediately filled with tears, not of sadness, but joy. David, I'm so happy for you, she whispered. He continued, I want you to come. I want you to be there. Mira covered her mouth to stop herself from crying out. Yes, I'll come. Of course I'll come. She didn't see David's hesitation, brief, quiet, before he replied. All right. See you then. They ended the call. Mira sat down slowly on the doorstep, her breath trembling. Her father came out and saw her eyes shining. What happened? He asked softly. He finished, she whispered. He is graduating, and he wants me to come. Her father looked at her for a long moment. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. Then go, he said. Go and see what your love has built. Mira nodded, her heart full. She had no idea that the journey ahead would not lead her to celebration, but to the truth, a truth she had been avoiding for so long. The evening before Mira was to travel, she could hardly sleep. She lay on her small mat, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the insects singing outside. She imagined the day ahead, David in a graduation gown, smiling proudly, reaching for her first, calling her name in front of everyone. This is the girl who made everything possible. Her heart swelled at the thought. She had waited years for that moment. She believed it was finally time for her joy. She woke up before dawn and heated water for her father's bath. She laid out the only decent dress she owned. It was not new, she had worn it to church many times, but she washed it carefully and ironed it with a warm metal plate, making sure every fold was smooth. Her father watched her quietly. You look beautiful, he said. Mira smiled softly and knelt so he could bless her journey. He placed his shaking hands on her head. May your heart not meet what will break it, he murmured. Mira hugged him. His blessing felt heavy, almost like a warning, but she did not dwell on it. Her heart was full of hope. The road to the city was long and dusty. Mira sat in the back of the bus, squeezed between two traders carrying baskets. The wind blew in through the open windows, filling her eyes with dust, but she didn't mind. She kept her small bag close and held her phone in her hand the entire journey, waiting for David to call. She watched the city grow closer, first the tall buildings, then the busy roads, the loud voices, the cars that moved faster than she was used to. Everything felt bigger, louder, brighter. She whispered to herself, Soon. I will see him soon. When the bus stopped, she stepped down slowly, unsure where to go. The city moved like a river, fast and without waiting for anyone. Mira stood still for a moment, overwhelmed. She dialed David's number. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. He did not pick. She waited, her fingers tightening around the phone. She tried again. This time he answered. Hello. His voice sounded distracted. David, I'm here. I've reached the city park. Oh, okay. I'm at the school hall. The program is starting. Just find a bike and come straight. Ask them for Bright Future University. Everyone knows it. His words were quick. No excitement. No warmth. But Mira did not think too deeply. She only nodded, even though he could not see her. Okay, I'm coming. She found a motorcycle rider and told him the name of the university. The ride was rough, noisy, and fast. The wind tore at her hair and her dress, but she held on tightly. She imagined David waiting for her at the gate. But when she arrived, he was not there. Students filled the compound, laughing, hugging, taking pictures, wearing gowns and caps, celebrating the end of struggle. Mira felt small among them. She walked slowly, searching. Then she saw him across the wide courtyard, wearing his graduation gown, smiling brightly, but not at her. He was standing beside a girl, beautiful, well-dressed, confident. Her hair was styled in long braids. She wore an expensive dress and jewelry that shone in the sun. They were holding hands. David looked different beside her, polished, proud, sure of himself. Mira stopped walking. Her feet felt rooted. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. For a moment, she just watched, waiting for him to look up and see her, to smile, to run to her, to say, "You came." But he didn't see her. Or maybe he saw her and pretended not to. Myra's fingers loosened on her bag. Her throat tightened. She took a slow breath, steadying herself, then she stepped forward. One step, another, toward the truth, a truth she prayed would not break her. Mira walked slowly across the courtyard, her steps small and careful, like someone afraid the ground might disappear beneath her feet. Her dress fluttered slightly in the breeze. She could feel people brushing past her, laughing, celebrating, taking pictures, a world full of noise, but inside her, everything was quiet. She stopped a few steps away from David. He noticed her then. His smile froze. His eyes changed, not surprised, not happy, not proud, but uneasy, as if her presence was a problem. "Mira," he said, his voice low, almost cautious. Mira smiled, a soft, hopeful smile that trembled. "I came," she said, "just like you asked." David nodded stiffly. He cleared his throat and shifted slightly, creating a small space, not to welcome her in, but to make sure she stayed out of the circle. The girl beside him looked at Mira curiously. David placed his arm lightly around the girl's waist, a gesture that was casual but full of meaning. "Mira," he said, "this is Sandra." Mira felt it, the floor beneath her heart tilting. Sandra smiled politely. It was a soft, gentle smile, the kind one gives a stranger in passing. "Hello," she said kindly. "David has told me something about you." Mira swallowed. Something. Not everything. Not who she was to him. Not the nights they stayed awake talking about the future. Not the promises. Not the years. Not the sacrifices. Just something. Mira nodded. "Hello," she replied quietly. There was a pause, long, uncomfortable, heavy like thick smoke that has nowhere to escape. Sandra leaned closer to David and said softly, "We should take more pictures before the photographer leaves." David nodded eagerly, too eagerly. Right, he said. He didn't look at Mira. Not once. He didn't ask how she came. He didn't notice the dust on her shoes from the long journey. He didn't ask if she had eaten. He didn't see the way her hands were shaking. Sandra began walking ahead to join her friends. David turned to Mira, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes, not fear of hurting her, but fear of being seen with her. He spoke quickly, like someone trying to escape. "Mira, look, I didn't expect you to arrive this early. Things are a bit complicated. I'll explain later. Just wait somewhere. I'll come and meet you." "Wait." Myra's eyes lifted to his. "You want me to wait," she whispered. David avoided her eyes. "Just for now. Please." She swallowed, the pain rising slowly, quietly, like water filling a room. She nodded once. "Okay." She stepped back. David exhaled, relieved. Relieved she did not make a scene. He walked away. He joined Sandra. He laughed. He posed for pictures. He held her waist again. He fit into that world, easily, naturally. Mira watched. Not with anger. Not yet. Just disbelief. She walked to a small bench under a tree, away from the crowd. She sat down, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her heart beating in painful, hollow thumps. She whispered to herself, so quietly the wind almost took the words away. "I just need to wait. He said he would explain. He will come." But the truth was already unfolding in front of her. It was in the pictures he took, in the laughter he shared, in the way he never once looked toward the tree where she sat. It was happening slowly, but clearly. She was watching him walk away in real time. Yet love can be so painfully loyal. So she stayed. She waited, under the shade of a tree, at the edge of a celebration that did not belong to her. And the day went on. The sun moved. The ceremony ended. People began leaving. And still, David did not come. The courtyard slowly emptied as the graduation celebration came to an end. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the compound. Students were leaving with their families, their laughter echoing faintly like distant bells. Mira was still sitting under the tree, her hands clasped together tightly to stop them from shaking. She had been waiting for hours, quietly, just like he asked. She watched the crowd thin, watched people hug, watched parents beam proudly at their children. And then she saw David walking toward her. But he was not alone. Sandra was with him, still holding his arm. They stopped in front of Mira. David took a quiet breath, as though preparing himself. "Mira," he began, "I should have said this earlier. I didn't want it to come out this way. But Sandra is my fiancée." The word fiancé did not land all at once. It came slowly, like a knife sliding in before the pain arrives. Mira felt the world become blurry for a moment. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Sandra looked at her, kindly, but without understanding, because she did not know who Mira was. She did not know the years, the sacrifices, the love. "Fiancé," Mira repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. David nodded, avoiding her eyes. Mira took a small step forward. "David," she said softly, "I cut wood with my own hands to send you to school. I walked under the sun. I carried loads heavier than my body. I didn't eat some days. I believed in you when no one did. I gave everything. For you." Her voice broke on the last word. A tear slid down, slow and warm, carving a path through the dust on her face. David's jaw tightened, not in sorrow but in discomfort, in shame. And shame often turns itself into coldness. "Mira," he said, his tone changing, "I didn't force you to do any of that. I never asked you to sacrifice yourself for me. You did what you wanted to do. And now my life is moving in a different direction." Mira blinked, slowly, as if absorbing a blow. So it had all come to this. Her love was not remembered as love. It was remembered as a choice he did not owe anything for. Sandra's expression changed, confused, unsettled, now realizing something deeper existed here, something she hadn't been told. But she remained silent. Myra's voice trembled now. "So all this time, I was just holding on to myself." David looked away. "I'm sorry, Mira, but I can't go back." The air between them went still, painfully still. Mira covered her mouth with her hand and let out a sound, not a scream, not a cry, something softer, more broken. A sound of something inside her collapsing. She turned slowly, like someone who had forgotten how to walk, and began to leave. No one stopped her. No one called her name. She walked through the school gate, down the dusty road, past the motorcycles and the shops and the noise, until the city became quiet behind her. Her tears didn't fall all at once. They came slowly, like her heart was crying drop by drop. It was late evening when she returned to the village. The sky was dark, the wind cold. Her father was sitting outside, waiting. When he saw her walking toward the house, alone, he knew. He didn't ask. He didn't say a word. He simply opened his arms, and Mira fell into him, shaking, sobbing, breaking. "Papa," she cried into his chest, her voice cracking painfully. "I did everything for him, everything, and he left me." Her father held her tighter, stroking her back gently. "My child," he whispered, his own voice heavy, "love is a seed. But it must be planted in soil that wants to grow. You planted in a heart that had already closed." Mira wept harder, clutching his shirt. Her father closed his eyes, feeling his own tears rise. "But listen to me," he continued, his voice steady despite the pain. "You did not lose anything. It is he who has lost, because the world has only won you. Kindness like yours is not found twice." Myra's cries softened into quiet sobs. Her father held her until the night grew silent. And in that moment, Mira did not heal. But she did not break alone. The days that followed were quiet in the small village. The kind of quiet that feels heavy, not peaceful, but filled with unspoken things. Mira woke up every morning, but her movements were slower now. She fetched water, swept the compound, prepared her father's tea. But the spark that once lived in her eyes was dim. She did not go to the market for a while. The firewood axe rested untouched against the wall. Her father watched her closely, not with pressure but with patient presence. He did not rush her grief. He knew heartbreak had no quick remedies. Sometimes, when the sun was high, Mira sat outside under the mango tree, just staring at the road. The same road she once looked at with hope, now she looked at with emptiness. She replayed everything in her mind. The nights she stayed awake talking to him. The mornings she woke early to work. The laughter. The promises. The dream. They felt distant now, like a story that happened to someone else. One afternoon, as Mira sat outside, her father came to sit beside her. He sat slowly, as his bones were not young anymore. They sat in silence for some time. "Mira," he said finally, his voice gentle, "you have cried enough for someone who did not see your worth." She didn't respond. Her eyes stayed fixed on the road. He continued, "Pain does not mean you were foolish. It means you loved. And loving is not a crime." A tear rolled down Myra's cheek, though she didn't even seem to notice it. "But now," her father said softly, "you must love yourself too." Mira took a slow breath, shaky, but deeper than before. "I don't know how to start again," she whispered. Her father nodded, as if he had expected that. "You don't start by forgetting," he said. "You start by living. One small step, then another. And slowly, your heart will remember how to beat without breaking." Mira closed her eyes. Her father's words did not fix the pain, but they softened it. Just a little. The next morning, she woke before dawn, just as she always used to. She sat on the edge of her bed, looking at her hands, the same hands that had once worked with pride and hope. She stood, tied her scarf, and walked to the bush. The air was cool, filled with the smell of early morning leaves. Birds were just waking. The world felt new, untouched. Mira picked up the axe. Her grip was unsteady at first, but then she exhaled slowly and began to gather wood. Her movements were slow but careful. She wasn't working for someone now. She wasn't sending money to anyone. She was simply trying to live again. When she returned to the market, the women noticed her. Some looked at her with sympathy, some with curiosity, but no one mocked her. And Mira did not speak much, but she worked. Quietly, steadily. Her heart was still healing, raw, bruised, tender, but she was breathing again. Weeks passed, slowly, gently. Sometimes she still cried at night. Sometimes she woke up with her chest tight. Healing is not a straight road. It is a winding path. But her father was there, always, sitting near her, helping her tie bundles, eating her food even when she barely tasted it. She was not alone. One evening, something unexpected happened. A truck stopped near her firewood stall. The driver was a calm-looking man with thoughtful eyes. He watched her work for a while, then approached. "I've been observing you," he said, his tone respectful, not intrusive. "Every day you are here. You carry yourself with dignity. I run a charcoal and timber supply business. I am looking for serious, honest partners from villages like this." Mira looked up slowly. His eyes were steady, not pitying, not curious, just sincere. "I can buy your firewood in bulk," he continued. "Not just these small bundles. If you're willing, it will mean more work, but also better income." Myra's breath caught slightly. She didn't speak yet. She simply listened. Her father, who had been nearby, stepped forward quietly. The man greeted him respectfully. They talked for some time, slow, detailed, gentle, not rushed, not forced. An opportunity was opening. Not because Mira chased it, but because life was beginning to turn. Very quietly, very slowly, just like healing. Mira began partnering with the man who came to the village. His name was Mr. Jonah. He was patient and respectful, never speaking to her as if she was small or dependent. He saw how hard she worked, how carefully she measured each bundle, how she never cheated anyone. He admired her honesty. With time, Mr. Jonah introduced her to suppliers, to transporters, and to market sellers in nearby towns. He taught her how to calculate profit, how to set prices, and how to save properly. Mira listened quietly. She did not rush herself. She learned slowly, steadily. Months passed, then a year. Her firewood stand became a small distribution stall, then a storehouse, then a small transport truck was hired in her name. She no longer carried firewood on her head. She oversaw workers now calm, gentle, and fair. Her father watched her rise with pride warming his tired eyes. "You see," he would say, resting his hand on hers, Your hands did not fail you. Your heart did not betray you. It only learned. Mira would smile softly. She was not the same girl who once waited under a mango tree with tearful hope. Her heart had healed, not quickly but truthfully. She had learned that love is not proven by suffering. Love is proven by how it returns what is given. And David never returned anything. David had started a new life with Sandra. At first, things were bright. They took pictures. They smiled. They attended weddings. They posed like the world was theirs. But life has its seasons. Sandra liked comfort, and David, fresh from university, did not yet have much to give. Her expectations grew sharper, her tone less gentle. Arguments filled the house. Money became a constant shadow. David tried to find good jobs, but competition was high. And every time he failed, Sandra's patience thinned. "You can't provide the life I want," she said one evening, her eyes cold. And eventually, she left, just walked away, leaving David with nothing but memories. Memories he tried to silence, but could not. And in those moments of quiet, when pride finally grew tired, Myra's face returned. Not the face of pain, but the face of loyalty, the girl who believed in him when no one did. Regret settled in his bones like winter cold. One morning, 2 years after the graduation day, a familiar figure walked into Myra's compound. David. His clothes were worn, his eyes tired, his shoulders no longer proud. Life had humbled him. Myra was sorting charcoal when she looked up and saw him. Her heart did not race. It did not stumble. It simply stood still, calm and steady. "Myra," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I came to say I'm sorry." She looked at him, really looked. Not with anger, not with longing, but with understanding. The kind that comes after pain has already done its work. "You hurt me," Myra said quietly. "You broke what I gave with all my heart." David nodded, tears gathering. "I was foolish, blind. I didn't know your worth. Please, if we could just—" Myra lifted her hand gently, not to silence him harshly, but to stop a wound from reopening. "There is no we," she said softly. "There is only what has passed and what we have learned." David swallowed hard. His tears finally fell. "I lost you," he whispered. Myra shook her head. "No," she said, calm and sure. "You lost yourself when you chose image over love. I only walked away when I had nothing left to hold on to." The wind moved softly between them. David lowered his head, sobbing quietly. Myra watched him, and then she did something surprising. She forgave him, not with words, not with promises, but with peace in her eyes. "You may go," she said gently. "Your journey is yours now. Mine has already begun." David looked at her one last time, at the strength she had become, and he knew the truth. He had lost something that life would not give him twice. He walked away, not because she told him to leave, but because he finally understood he did not belong in the life she had grown into.